meeting to order. Welcome to Social Services, our favorite meeting of the year, CBDG and home. We're very excited. We have a full house tonight. Good to see everybody. So I just wanted to open with, let's see if we have an agenda. Somebody's gonna make a motion? Let's make a motion. I can make the motion.
Motion to approve the agenda?
All right, second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we've got an agenda, and it's packed, and we love it. Okay, all right, do we have any announcements? I actually have a question, if we don't have any announcements. Do you have announcements?
No.
So my question was about commissioner recruitment and how that's going. I heard a little rumor, but I was
Yes,
like that.
I know they're still in the process of doing recruitment. They're prioritizing some other work that they're getting done first, but the recruitment is open. Applications are available, they're still accepting applications. They haven't told me yet whether or not, how it's shaken out for who's got what, but we know that the recruitment is open.
Great, wonderful. All right.
Oh, I'll make that one quick announcement.
Oh, sure.
Just that we are missing a commissioner this evening, but we do have quorum, and so we will be moving forward. And I don't believe that we're expecting our liaison tonight, so our council liaison tonight.
All right, yeah, I saw a picture of Deanna living it up in Spain. I was like, we'll be missing you. I literally wrote, I was like, we'll be missing you tomorrow. She's like, I'll miss you too. Okay, any other comments? No? All right.
Oh, yeah, one thing.
An announcement?
Yes, I think classifies it as an announcement, I'm not
Sure.
sure. But, the report for Meals on Wheels?
Yes, so we did have on the agenda that we would have a liaison report from Meals on Wheels, but we are moving that to the June agenda instead.
Okay, good. All right, seeing no other announcements, let's move to public comment. Do we have any public commenters? All right, moving right along. This is good stuff. Okay, did people have time to review the minutes from April 15th? I did. All right, so do we have any amendments to the April 15th minutes?
I do have an amendment. It had a comment about me no longer being the co-chair, but I never was the co-chair. And there's an error on the website as well.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
It's on the website too?
It says I'm co-chair.
Other than that, though, the minutes looked good. So could we, with that amendment, move to approve the minutes? Or motion to approve?
Is that your motion?
That's my motion, yes.
A second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And we have minutes. Good stuff. All right, we got a little sneak attack excitement with our development of the 413 East Street Affordable Housing Project. So I'll turn it over to you.
All right, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. Before you have a recommendation for a development called 413. It is a 15-unit development, and that's the rendering of it, 4 stories. And I think somewhere in the packet there's a rendering of each story. The staff recommended to approve it. Did not recommend to approve it as submitted because initially it was submitted with both of the affordable units. There's a 2-unit affordable unit requirement. It was submitted with those being the 2 smallest units. Reached back out to the developer to see if we could get actually one of them changed, and the developer agreed to change both of them. So the way it's submitted now is with both the low income and very low income units being larger sizes. So we move to recommend to approve the project as submitted now.
Great. All right, do we have any public comments?
I have a clarifying question before public comment, if that's okay. That's helpful to hear, because I noticed in the paperwork that we had, it listed the square footage, oh, I'm sorry, that's being a little, being listed differently. Can you confirm the final square footage?
So the final square footage is, the very low income unit will be 530 units, and the low income unit will be 561 units.
It's right on
It's listed differently in different pages.
the, oh, is it?
Correct,
I
yes.
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't came out.
Okay.
So
That's
with-
great, thank you for doing that advocacy, because then that falls in line with having it be comparable to the other units within the building, so that's correct.
All right, let's move to public comment. Do you have any comments on this project? All right, seeing no public comments, let's discuss.
I have a question. I have a question about the in lieu fee for the partial rating. It does line up, that it's just at about 14% by having two within the number of allotted units. And so I saw that it has a partial in lieu fee to make up the difference. Has there been further discussion about what that amount is?
So there will not be, that will not happen because we have not written that into our ordinance as of yet. So we don't have any standing to move forward with collecting any small percentage of an in lieu of fee. So the requirement, if I'm not mistaken, when I did my calculations, it was 2.25. And typically, what you'll find is in other regions, there will be some level of concession for that 0.25 that might collect a percentage of the in lieu of fees. Unfortunately, in Davis, that has not been memorialized through your ordinance yet. So there is no standing for us to collect any level of the in lieu of fee.
Is there a threshold for that? 0.25, okay, that's fine.
So, for Davis, no. But again, typically what happens is in other cities, you'll see, okay, either we'll round down or we will calculate some level in lieu of fee based on that percentage. That's generally written into the inclusionary zone ordinances. But again, there is no concession here.
Okay, so in the recommendation as it stands now,
Mhm.
in the paperwork that was shared with us to review it, it does say that there is the partial piece.
Correct. I didn't, so we had initially had conversations, but after speaking to community development, there is no, again, there is no standing to be able to. So my experience is that yes, that's what we would do. So I didn't realize that in Vegas, there is no standing to be able to do that.
So I want to make sure this is totally clear. So because we don't explicitly have the language that a partial fee would be accepted, only an entire fee, is that the problem?
So
Because we
no, it
have
would not be
a
an
fee.
entire fee for that because
Right,
the entire fee would be for a full unit. right?
absolutely, I understand that.
So, I had been, what I was told was that typically they just round down for right now, because there is no language in the inclusionary ordinance that would require you to either round up or take any level of inclusionary fee.
So I'm to understand that the developer has expressed interest in paying for a partial unit.
No, the developer, we did not present it to the developer.
Oh, because it says in our paperwork that applicant has expressed interest in paying for a partial unit as in lieu fees. It says it at the top of, what page is this? Page 7. So my concern there is that we have an applicant that expressed an interest in paying a partial in lieu fee and that our city decided to interpret the ordinance in a way that is less advantageous
So
for
can
affordable housing
you,
consent.
sorry,
So I'm
Commissioner
concerned
Ennis,
about
can you please express to me what page you're looking at?
It's the top page 7, and so it has the table 1 unit summary, and it has the 2, and it has a star. And then it says star right beneath it, which is at the top of the next page. I think it's supposed to be like a footnote, but it's on the next top of the next page, which is page 7. 15% of 15 units are 2.25 units. Instead of providing another unit, the applicant has expressed interest in paying for a partial unit as in lieu fees. So I think that perhaps that's something that needs to be clarified because while I believe that it's absolutely right that a full unit would would match a full in lieu payment. And I'm wondering about the interpretation of the ordinance. So maybe we need clarification from the Community Development Office on that.
So I don't, can you please,
It's right above an
I
environmental
see it, I see
determination.
it, I see it.
There we go, yeah.
So that you have understanding,
Yeah,
what happened when I made the recommendation, that was what I interpreted through my experiences, right? So when I initially made the recommendation, I communicated to community development that moving forward, I would like to see more equitable mix of the units and a percentage of the inclusionary fee to be interpreted for that 0.25. And the community development department communicated back to the developer. But between that communication back to the developer and other communications with community development, I was told that there is no standing within the city of Davis's ordinance. So at that point, I don't know that it was fully communicated to the developer, but at the same token, I did not make that recommendation moving forward because of what I learned subsequent to the communication with the planner and community development.
I'm wondering about the difference between no standing and it hasn't been done before. Because that comes down to an interpretation of the ordinance.
So I would say, because we're in the process of finalizing the language.
So we're working,
Yeah.
currently, we are working on developing new language for the ordinance with the city attorney. And it is the plan to move forward with developing language that would have some level of standing to be able to do that. Right now, I would think that since it's not there and it hasn't been done, that's not something we would move forward with until the language has been developed.
It's like in other processes. You have an existing ordinance. Until you amend that ordinance and accept new language, you can't inject something into an existing ordinance until the ordinance has been amended, and it's been approved, and the ordinance has been revised. At this point, we have not revised the ordinance to include that language. It's still in process, but we have to use the existing language, and the existing language does not address the ability to do that rounding.
So we're referring to the half of the ordinance that we did on July 18th, 2023, which I know was just the for rent portion and not the for sale portion, right?
Correct.
And so that was another question that I had, is that our report, this report right now says on July 18th, 2023, it adopted the ordinance, right? And so I know we have the for rent portion done. Are you saying that this is because the for sale portion is not completed yet?
No, it's
Or this is?
my understanding is we're working on the for rent portion. That is my understanding. We're currently working on the for rent portion. And so the ordinance has been done, but my understanding is the piece that addresses the alternatives to the inclusionary policy have not been adopted as of yet. And that is what we're working on.
I see, okay. And it has to be adopted by, because we have the drafts of the list of
Correct.
alternatives.
Correct.
Right, okay. So the
Correct.
15% was set, the
Correct.
exclusionary, the limit of the exemptions was set
Correct.
at 7 or up,
Correct.
right? And the list of alternatives is in final.
Correct.
However, in our ordinance, we do have that piece where, based on negotiation with the city, in the previous ordinance, there's, you could call it wiggle room, you could call it negotiating room around how the in lieu fees are structured and whether or not they meet the full percentage. So I'm still not entirely clear on the statement that we have no standing, because I know that the city could open the conversation to ask if the applicant would be willing to do that. The 0.25 of, what did we reset it to, 82,000, something close to that?
I think it was right currently
It was
until
75
July
before.
1 is 70 something.
Right,
It doesn't change until
until it's finally done.
until July 1, when the master fee schedule changes.
Understood. So, but even so, if we're talking about a partial of the previous in lieu fee, that is a rounding error compared to the entire project. 0.25 of 70,000 is a very small number, right? So I'm just wondering about the city utilizing its ability to negotiate that, because I hear you, we don't explicitly say we have to round up to this amount, the alternatives aren't final yet, but there's still room there. So I don't know if I accept the statement that we have no standing to request this.
I hear you.
So
Yeah.
this is something that we can take back as a commentary to the Community Development Department. We can always address your concerns with the project. And again, this is your opportunity to kind of bring these things forward. We can always bring this to community development, see if they can talk with the developer and if there is room to do so. I would have to defer to the Community Development Department though, because we'd have to see if there's precedent to do that. That would be one thing. And it would really be up to them to make the determination of if this is something they would like to apply to this particular project, because it may impact other projects that they have as well. So we can't make that determination. It really would be up to the Community Development Department.
Can I say something? So you guys have the ability to make your recommendations, right? So if that's something that you want to interject and interpret into your recommendation, then at that point I would say, go ahead, move forward in that light, and then that is something that I can take back.
I mean, I would suggest that we make a recommendation that the city talk to the applicant about it, because even if there is no precedent, if the applicant decided to choose to do this in a good faith move, that would be helpful. Is the applicant in the room right now? The applicant needs to be in the room right now.
Can we do that? I mean, after public comment is closed?
Yeah, I can as a response to a question, yes, you can. Whether or not he can make a commitment without speaking to the community development is another thing. So it would be difficult for him to make that commitment without having a further conversation with the affordable housing manager and the community development, so.
Okay, well then I want to speak to the positive parts of it. Overall, we've seen this project come before us, and I'm very appreciative that they lined up on the square footage and that it serves two categories that we desperately need, with very low income being included. So overall, I'm really, really pleased with this project, and this is an open question as to whether or not it fully meets the spirit of the inclusionary zoning ordinance with the alternatives, since it is below the 15%. And so I would really love to hear more information on that from both community development and from the applicant.
And I had a question as far as the accessibility. I wasn't sure if this was a four-story building that was with a staircase, or I'm just trying to think about mobility challenged individuals and their ability to potentially be eligible for one of the rentals.
I'm looking at the rendering. And I don't believe I can. So.
So you see, what happened? I don't know. Just a second. We'll give them a moment just to kind of ask that question. We've got some base things that have to happen with the construction. We just want to confirm the accessibility piece.
So currently, as it's drawn, we're going to delay whether or not it's ADA compliant. We'll have to come back and let you know if it's ADA compliant.
Yeah, it seems like there's some, we need to address that further with the community development, just to make sure that we have the right answer. So that's something that we will go back and ask.
All right, are there any other questions?
I have a couple more questions. So for the design review, who is responsible for the review?
So community development is responsible for the design review. Our department would only be concerned with the affordable housing units. So for the overall design review, that would be community development.
I see. And is that review also inclusive of the CEQA determination, which is?
Yes.
That's part of it too, okay. The other question I have is that I'm trying to understand how the planning commission review and our review process over, if at all. I'm understanding that we're reviewing this because the planning commission is not being required. And I think we had this discussion a while ago about when it is that a planning commission is required and when not. And I think when we had that conversation, it was not in practice yet for me. So if it's possible to explain that again.
So,
I appreciate it.
and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is the Social Service Commission is only responsible for interpreting and determining recommendations for the affordable units, not the overall design or review of the project, just the affordable units.
So we're looking at the affordability of those units, if it's going to be compliant with the income requirements that are happening for those particular units. So we have a very narrow focus for the overall design and for approvals and completions, and if they've met regulatory requirements, that goes to the planning commission. So the only thing that we ask you guys to look at is that affordability piece.
Thank you.
And is this is also part of a downtown plan also, because it's downtown?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I think downtown also doesn't go to planning, I think. Not entirely sure I do that one.
That's my understanding.
All right, do you have any other questions?
There are a couple ways you can move forward. You can approve with conditions, say that you'd like us to come back, or, and to address some of the ordinance requirements. But those are one way forward.
So I just received some information, the applicant has indicated that they would be willing to move one of the other affordable unit to the first floor, and at that point, they would be ADA compliant.
All right, how are you feeling? Well, moving forward. I like that, thank you very much for accommodating that. I think conditions, approval with conditions, and come back to us maybe next month. Okay, does everyone feel okay about that? Okay, you have a motion?
Can we talk about what those conditions would be?
Oh, absolutely.
I think we'd like to ask that it be explored with the applicant that they provide a partial in-lieu payment. And I don't have any other criticisms of the affordable plan based on the square footage, the placement, ADA compliance, so I'm happy with it, except for this detail. So that would be the condition.
Okay. All right, would you like to make a motion?
Any questions or friendly amendments?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that social services approve the affordable housing plan as outlined in the staff report under the condition that the applicant be formally asked to provide a partial in-lieu payment.
All right, second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. You have an approval with a condition.
Thank you.
All right, now we're in for the big stuff, public hearing.
So, let me say something first before I move into our public hearing. This process formally opens our public comment period for your recommendations to council. This is a new process for us. Having the Social Services Commission really see the applications, deliberate on them, and really rate and rank the applications as they come in. So it's a new process for us, but it really has given the commission an opportunity to learn more about the process and take more ownership of that process. This is also the opportunity for the public, having seen what the applications are and what their requests have been, to make public comments so that they can be considered when you finally deliberate. Because your deliberation tonight is your ability to take your recommendations, and those recommendations will go to council. And so there's some funding that is prescribed by HUD, and so that really isn't part of your deliberation process. That's the administration that the city can reserve to pay for staff that's going to be doing this process. But we always make that available to you by way of being transparent. So administration is, the city is allowed to reserve 20% of the total TDPG amount and home amounts for administration. If we don't receive applications in public facilities, the city can also maintain that funding and use that internally. And so we're also making that available to you too. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? Just as a reminder, staff reviewed each of the applications that came in after at the time of the deadline. We did not have any late applications. Once they were received, we reviewed them to make sure that they did meet all of the minimum requirements. We made sure that they were addressing things that were on the critical needs list, at least one element from the critical needs list, and we didn't have any additional questions for the applicant gave them an opportunity to come in and make corrections if they needed to, but we really didn't have anyone that needed to do so. We didn't receive any new applications this year, so that we really are seeing people that are familiar with the process, have been before us before. But as a reminder, CDBG, to apply for CDBG, you must be a registered nonprofit, and we verified that as well. Staff verified that. You got to meet minimum contracting requirements. We also required that the applicants would make sure that the city is named insured on the insurance policies, and we make sure that they met at least one of the HUD national objectives. Every application that came through, we have at least some information on, but we did make sure that they met all of these standards. And we did pretty much this, we did the same thing for home. We made sure that they were a certified community development housing corporation. And this year, because we only had the one application, we were familiar with the applicant. We had background information on them as well, but we also made sure it was current. So, with that, I'm going to take a risk. And there's, here we go. We are going to do some scoring live. So I'm hoping that before you, I will make copies for everyone to see what all of the applications that came through that were eligible for funding. So we had 9 applications in public services, 2 applications from one organization, 2 applications from another organization with different projects, and we had 1 home application. And you can see that we've got all of the commissioner scores, including Commissioner Swerdloff's scores and her comments. And I have copies of the applications here and copies of your comments here as well. So as we are deliberating, we can kind of look back through if we need to. And I want to talk a little bit about this amount requested column. The bold is the maximum that the applicant said that they were requesting, and then the unbolded is the minimum that they said that they would need in order to move forward. So that's why you have those 2 numbers there. There is a ranking column, and you can see that based on your scoring, the applications were ranked. We had a couple of ties. We had 2 ties for second. We had YOLO Children's Alliance and Meals on Wheels tied in scoring. And then we also had YOLO Food Bank and the Davis Emergency Shelter tied in their scoring levels as well. So with that, what I will do is really work with you you can talk about why you arrived at your scores, what you thought was important that you noted. You can have that conversation with each other. And so I will leave to you if you prefer to deliberate and take public comments, or if you would like to take public comments and then start your deliberation process. It's up to you.
I would like to take public comments.
So let's do this. Try this again.
All right, do we have any public commenters? Please, come forward.
Hello, I'm Steve Streeter, former planning commissioner, advocate for the Respite Center. And actually, I was going through the list of Meals on Wheels. I did that today. And both Paul's Place and Respite Center benefit from leftover meals, so that's a great thing. The Respite Center is certainly in need of improvements. Heating and cooling this time of year. The downtown street team has upgraded the main building with 3 sofas so people lie down there when it's hot or cold for that matter. But there's also a need for ADA improvements right now. The shower and bathroom rooms they have require going upstairs. So somebody using a wheelchair, a walker, cane, that is awkward. I've been part of it since it started in 2020, and also in Faith rotating winter shelter and drove a former Davis Community Transit bus for about a month and a half until the pandemic hit. But there are a number of people there that certainly need help, and the downtown streets team has been hiring new people, and today they're extended their hours from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., so that's a wonderful thing as well. So the improvements, right now, if you've been to the Westwood Center, it's like being in a garage with a hot tower. So the improvements would include heating, cooling, fire suppression, insulation of the walls, lowered ceiling. And one thing I'm hoping will occur is that there will be accessible restrooms with grab bars, so somebody that can't go upstairs and all readily will be able to do so. So if you have any questions for me, but I'm mainly here to advocate for that, the amount of money that's recommended in the staff report. Thank you.
You. Another public commenter.
Hi, my name is Andy Waterhouse. Like Steve, I'm also on the board of Heart of Davis, and I'm also here to support the improvements to the Westwood Center. I think it's sorely needed, and I'm glad it's in the staff recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public commenters? All right, let's discuss. Just a clarification, how much is available? Was it the 108 number, 108,023? Okay. So we're looking at a difference of almost $19,000 from what?
So, for the CDBG facilities project?
For public service, sorry.
Public service, oh yes. So for, public services, the total HUD allocation is $108,023.
Okay.
And as you can see, the total request came up to $241,326 for their high request, and then for the minimum request, it was $127,000.
Yeah, so we're looking at a difference of about almost $19,000 between the minimum and what's available. Okay? That's the sense, sure.
Dana, do we, when will that number be final? Because I know there can sometimes be late adjustments. just
Not
to
this
help
time.
us.
We actually received our allocation from HUD. We
This
did.
is fine.
This is our, this is
Oh,
the number
okay.
that they said, so,
Okay.
and it's, they've already received that number from Congress, so we don't expect it to fluctuate at all.
Okay, that puts us in a different position than
Yes.
usually, so
Yes.
that's helpful. I also want to apologize to my fellow commissioners that I misunderstood on the scoring, and so my hundreds, each of them have to be 5 lower, and I'm so sorry about that. So forgive me for that, but I did want to, if you see 100 on my list, that I'm intending to give them the maximum score.
Okay, I wanted to start off by thanking all of our applicants for their thorough applications. They were a joy to read. They really were well put together, as always. So, okay, public services. How do we begin?
Did any of you have any particular applicants that you wanted to make comments about? Or any things in particular applications that stood out to you? And we can always start with that.
Yeah, there were definitely a few that I had conditional scoring. Some explicitly were able to self-assert that they've been really good about past grants and things, and other people didn't explicitly do it. And so in those cases, I felt like we had to rely on staff to know what has past experience been, would it be the full range of points for that. And then there were a couple of questions I had about what certain things meant, and that was determined in my points. So I don't know if it would make sense to go one by one through group and we address it, or we wanted to go about it a different way.
Well, I saw some of your comments, and so one comment was related to scoring might have been different if they were able to address, if they were able to collect data and do, if they had the technology
Right.
that was required to, collect information and to share information. Generally, what staff is looking for is, because these applicants don't all have to be tied into the homeless management information system, which is a system, the HMIS system. But in this case, most of them are, but if they are not, they are providing us with a level of record keeping that is electronic so that we can see that they are collecting that information. So some of them didn't explicitly say that in their application, but in staff's previous work with these agencies, all of them are able to use technology to provide updated data, provide us with outcomes, and give us a report. So I uniformly awarded them reports.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say
There,
that
got
was
it,
my number.
yeah. So we did that. And then you had, there were some questions about whether or not, how people were they meeting our requirements for reporting? Were they timely? What is staff seeing from all of these applicants? And in our view, we've been able to receive information in a timely way. Whenever we do have questions and we reach out, the agencies have all been responsive. They've been able to provide us with their quarterly reports, that we're finalizing those for the previous program year now. We'll be getting those on a more on a monthly basis going forward, so it should make things a little bit easier for you next year. There's some information that you will see more of next year that you weren't seeing this year. This year was a little wonky as we put new policies and procedures in place. But now that we've worked with the agencies, they know what the policies and procedures are, they know what kind of reporting we're gonna be requesting, you'll be able to see that when you score next year, that yes, staff has checked off all of these boxes. So for all of these current agencies, they are all current on their reporting, they're all providing us with information, so we don't have any concerns about that with any of them.
All right.
I know, one question I had was, because people interpreted the budget sheet differently, some said their entire organization's budget, some very narrowly picked a project. And I know that the maximum threshold for agencies should be 500,000. So looking at the Yolo Food Bank, it already looked like a very high budget, and that was not including the additional 30 or something staff that they had. And so I just wanted to be certain that they do meet that budget.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
And then in next year, we did want to clarify with the agencies, you want to look at what their overall budget is so you can see, what is the size, what are they typically working with. But we're asking them specifically for this particular project. What will it take to make this project viable? So we encourage agencies to give us their whole budget because you can see if this makes sense. But when they were providing this information, it was really kind of a budget. It was to really address this particular project and what it would take to make it work.
I have a question about the amounts of money that they are requesting and what they're eventually going to receive from us. I know there's the maximum and then there's the minimum, but anywhere between that they could get, so it's not just either one or the other?
No, it's not, and that's what you're deliberating about tonight. Based on the budget that you have, which is $108,000, how do you think based on the scoring and what you're thinking about these agencies, how would you like to award that funding? We can't give them more than what they asked for. So if they gave us a number that said, we can do this project with $20,000, then we can't say, oh, we're gonna award you more than that. But we know that the minimum that we can award anyone is $7,000. So you can award them anywhere between actually zero, because you can choose not to award based on your conversation. It's completely up to you. So you can make a determination of how much if you want to make the award one, and then how much you think you would like to award this agency.
just to clarify, even though they set a minimum threshold, we could go below
It's, you are making recommendations whether or not to fund and for how much. But for us, the minimum that you can award is $7,000. But if you choose not to award that 7, then your recommendation can be 0. But not in between 0 and 7,000. How's that? Is that clear?
Yeah. And all of these applicants were funded in the past.
Yes, they have. And that's a category that I can add for next year, so you can see previous year's funding. If you-
Yeah, so that's what actually, we had actually traditionally seen the year before how much they had been funded for. And I'm sure if I dug through my minutes, I actually could find it. Yeah, I mean, we definitely have it from last year.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have, yeah, maybe, I have some questions, comments here. So we know these providers well, right? We have been working with them, some of them for decades, right? There's not an organization on here that I wouldn't say is a critical part of addressing the needs in our community, so I know that this is a struggle for all of us. I want to speak on the one that was rated the lowest, and that is the YOLO Community Care Continuum. I could speak and tout the benefits of all of them, but because this one's rated the lowest, I want to just take a second. That, to the best of my knowledge in our list here, is the only one that is explicitly supporting individuals dealing with serious mental health issues. We know that that's a serious need in the community. We know that it's an area that is not as well funded as it could be and should be. So I know that we rated it low here, but I personally don't think that we should choose to not fund one of these organizations. Perhaps through the course of our deliberations, we could be convinced of that. But I would just love to hear from my colleagues what gave you pause on that application in particular, since I think based on reading, it's the one that's most at risk.
I agree with Judy. I mean, addressing what you said earlier, I think it would be hard for us to not fund. I mean, being that these organizations have been the lifeblood of our community for so long, it would be hard to come back with a 0 funding for any of them. And I actually did find the funding summary. I'll write it down and I'll let everyone know from last year.
That's great.
But I did love the explicit focus for Y3C on mental illness.
Yeah, looking at my notes, some of the comments I had made around my scoring was, some of the points could be conditional based on how their past performance was, so I could adjust for that. And then also, if technology didn't matter, we could adjust for that, so I could increase based on those things. But I think also the comparison of how they filled out the budget form compared to other people, there just left a lot of questions about cost reasonableness, because I wasn't sure how it compared to the overall budget. At the time, let's see, it mentioned that the state leverages CDBG for HUD, but I wasn't sure that the opposite was true, so I didn't know how to then rank for leveraging. So I think that's how it impacted it slightly lower, because there's some conditional things I need to adjust on.
My scoring mirrors yours too. I didn't find as much details in their budget as I did with the other ones, and so that was, a difference of 10 points, I guess. So that made the difference for me. So it was the lack, or not necessarily lack, but just compared at least to the other ones, their budgeting was not as clear.
I don't know the people who wrote this, but I could say that if that is the consistent concern, that might be something that in future application rounds, like as far as I could tell, the budgets were much cleaner this year.
They were, they absolutely were.
All of the applications were really strong, so I think that that's a credit to our city partners, the city's partnership with them, right? So credit where credit's due. This whole process is much more seamless than usual. But I wonder if that's the biggest reason that we have for knocking their points down, that could be viewed as a capacity concern or an administrative concern, less than a quality of the program and those that are served by it, right?
I agree with that. I found myself while I was reviewing this, when giving my scores, some of them higher, some of them lower, thinking that in a way, it's not really dependent on the quality of work that they're doing. It's just their ability to communicate that, and that's based on so many other reasons. And so I was at one point thinking, why can't we just give them all the money and make it all fit? We don't have to worry about who gets 100 and who gets 75. Just come to the table thinking, we're going to give you money. Now we'll just figure out how to make it so that everybody gets something, as opposed to going through this very, for me, torturous process of figuring out who gets 5 points versus 15 points, knowing that maybe it's not really the quality I'm scoring, but just the ability to put it on paper.
Well, look at it this way, because the rankings are giving you really a jump off point. So that you all kind of have an understanding of, where you think subjectively each of these agencies fall. It doesn't mean that you're not going to fund all of them. You still have a budget that you have to fluctuate with, but how much you fund them can be determined by some of these rankings. It just helps you to kind of make a decision about that. And those are some of the things that you're considering. How well are they able to pull together an application and provide clear information? Those are all things that are required of all agencies that are seeking funding from any funding source. So what are the basics? Are they able to provide those basics and make it clear? If you have more questions about programming, if you have more questions about that thing, if you have questions about their budgets, these are things that you can ask them about, going forward. How do we adjust for that? But I do want to point something else out to you. You'll notice that in these requested amounts, some of these amounts are, they're kind of high. So in looking at how you've awarded funding in the past, have you ever awarded someone their full ask? Have you ever awarded someone just based on what the request is? We'll just give them what they asked for. That's where you can make those adjustments, particularly if the request seems to be higher than what you're seeing from other organizations based on the amount of funding that we have. So that's part of your deliberation.
So I have the numbers if people want them from what was funded last year, what was recommended. And I think we funded everyone at the recommended level. So I'll just go down. Davis Community Meals and Housing was $16,000.
For which program?
Sorry, for the homeless outreach.
Okay.
Emergency shelter was $24,000. Stake for both of them was $7,000.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
I'll add this in here. So emergency shelter was 24,000.
24.
Okay. Make sure that I did it.
Okay, and each stake was $7,000.
I am not the best typer, so I'm kind of, as you can see, it takes me a minute.
That was doing that in there.
And then there.
Yellow Christ Nursery was $8,600. Okay, I didn't find anything for Yellow Children's Alliance for last year. But Meals on Wheels was $16,400. And Y3C was $12,000. I didn't find anything for Yellow Christ.
So, state should have had, it would have been called something, they would call
let's
assistance
see.
maybe. Rental assistance maybe?
Yeah, so rental assistance and food pantry, both of them, or 70,000. Oh, here's it.
And I'm incorrect, Food Bank is a new agency.
Okay, so it looks like I skipped over one, YOLO County Children's Alliance.
Oh, you did that, okay.
Yeah, 15,000.
Okay.
Yeah, YOLO food pantry isn't on
Okay.
It's totally new or just wasn't last year?
here. I don't know, I don't think they're completely new. Sorry, YOLO Children's Alliance was 15,000. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Okay, so that Davis Community Buildings and Housing, homeless outreach was 16, emergency shelter was 24, the food pantry was $7,000 from state, rental assistance was $7,000 from state, YOLO Crisis Nursery was $8,600, YOLO Children's Alliance was $15,000, Meals on Wheels was $16,400, and Y3C, was $12,000, and the food bank is a new request.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, another overall criteria that was running through my head is that some people were asking for direct funding or materials, and I think there was one that also incorporated administrative overhead, and so in my mind, that skews a little differently than the money going towards direct service.
And
So, I would prefer to fund direct funds.
And understandably, looking at some of these, the food-based projects, the price of fruit, as we all know, has skyrocketed. So these increased numbers make sense. But as to how much? Yeah,
I have something I'm still wrestling with. I want to make sure that I understood this. So the 500,000 limit is on the project, not on the overall agency size. So it doesn't matter if the agency is gigantic. If the project they are funding with these dollars has a cap on the, at 500,000 or less, we can use CDBG dollars for that. Okay. Even if that is the rule, and even if everyone here complies with that, I wonder if it's helpful for us to put into context that some of these organizations have access to a lot more dollars than others. Right? So if that's helpful, just gonna make me sound like I'm not a fan of Yellow Food Bank. Yellow Food Bank, I love your work, but you have a $22 million, more than $22 million budget. And government funding is only 10% of that. The rest is from significant donations from other sources. So I wonder if, based on the share of resources from these organizations that they don't have access to compared to Yellow Food Bank, if we were to make a cut somewhere, I don't think we should give anyone zero, if we were to go below what they've asked for, that would be the candidate to me.
Is there any way to know if the Yellow Food Bank is complete? I don't think they're completely new, but I would be interested to see what we had funded them in the past. Funded, what level?
And they may have just been,
I think they may have skipped a year.
yeah, may have skipped a year. I think they've had some transition, so. Because I don't feel that, they're new to us this year, but I don't feel like they hadn't been funded in the past either. I think that they have been funded in the past. So I can confirm it.
So based on that, colleagues, do we have any proposals about adjustments to the funding? My understanding right now, Commissioner Fulcook, Chair Fulcook,
Yes.
is that we're trying to figure out the gap between the 108 we have and the 127. Is that
So-
right?
Guess what? Somebody did that. Someone did the math. So we're looking at a shortfall of $18,977. So something we could do is we could do a reduction across the board on all of them. We could do a reduction just on the, actually that would be, it would be. We could do a reduction on everyone who asked for more than $7,000 also.
That's everyone.
No, so there's 3 that only asked for 7. You'll
Oh, for the
children-
minimum, yeah.
For the minimum.
Okay.
So yeah, so we're only looking at minimums at this point. We're not looking at maximums, I think. So I did do a quick calculation. I mean, this is not necessarily the way I think we should go at this point. But if we reduced by 18%, everyone except for both stakes and the YOLO Children's Alliance, we reduced by, it's like 17.9%. That would bring us within the catchment we need to be in.
Definitely an option. The other way to go would be we take that 18 from just YOLO Food Bank and DCMH because they're applying for 2 grants. So if we were to just do that approach,
There you go.
then we could guarantee the minimums for everyone else and then still give something sizable to our friends at YOLO Food Bank and at DCMH. But then that's still a challenge to figure out.
So my issue is that DCMH has received consistent funding from us for years and years and years and years. So,
Fair point.
yeah, so operationalizing, I mean, I feel,
Okay.
Would that be the case of many of these candidates? Yeah, I mean, that's the hard thing, is I don't know the longevity of how much they're relying on this funding versus its extra cushion.
So again, it's very subjective. And it may help to think back to your critical needs list. Think back to some of the trends that you're seeing in the community. To look at some of the programs that are being suggested. To say, based on trends, where you think the funding would have the most impact.
do you have a critical needs list that we could project?
I do. Let me save this first. I believe there we go. Here are all the critical needs in the very bottom boxes.
Reviewing this, I see that mental health is not listed, and I wonder if that will be different in our next critical needs list after we finish the process. However, in addition to the mental health support that they provide, they also are working with a population that struggles
with stable housing, right? So we could view it, while I believe that the mental health supports they provide are critical, based on this list, I would say that that's a housing application.
Well, but in the
Oh,
needs
no,
list,
it's-
it's cost with health and mental health. So it's one.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
So I've got this column for commission recommendations. Would it help to just throw some numbers into the column? So you can kind of see where they shake out?
I'm just doing some quick math, because that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, we could iteratively see how it shakes out through the straw poll.
Yeah, easier to see.
Okay. All right, I have some numbers.
Okay.
We can just throw in there. So for homeless outreach, 15,000. For emergency shelter, 24,000. For the stake for both of them, $7,000 each. For YOLO Crisis Nursery, 8,600. YOLO Children's Alliance, 7,000. Meals on Wheels, 16,400. Y3C, 10,000. And that actually leaves, I left the YOLO Food Bank blank. But I think that, I mean, we could put something, we could put 13,000 or something in there. I think that would bring us to 108, I think.
So your totals did not include any, had some left over in the tank?
Yeah, so there's leftover in the tank for YOLO Food Bank.
I would, thank you, Rachel, for throwing numbers down. I want to second what Rachel said with the friendly amendment, that I think that one aspect I see here in the numbers is that some of these organizations have a huge range, and some of them have a very tight
Yes.
range, where I think that that minimum versus that maximum is a bigger deal to these small organizations.
Yes.
So I support giving less money to YOLO Food Bank. And I would like to add a little bit more money to stake. Yeah, because was there anyone else that went below the minimum
No,
Or
everyone's at
everyone's
the minimum. Everyone's at the minimum. So the people that were at 7,000, I kept them at 7,000, and everyone else I pushed to last year's funding.
though? Understood, good thinking, that's a really solid rationale.
So that leaves us, that leaves us with about 13,000 with the YOLO Food Bank, and we could, as we adjust the numbers, that's where it would get adjusted.
Is that 13 accounting for the increase for stake, or no?
So yeah, so that, the 13 would go up and down according to how we fund.
Can you repeat for me what you suggested for DCMH for their emergency shelter number?
20,000.
24, okay, so slightly less than the minimum they asked for, but that's consistent with last year's?
Yep. So what would you think, what are you thinking about stake? How much more would you think?
Commissioner Wong-Chen, Commissioner, do you have other,
Oh.
Justine, do you? Commissioner Van Weyden, sorry.
I mean, one compelling thing is that they're talking about the food distribution. So as far as thinking about like the lower down the chain of the food bank and then how people are distributing things. And so in that way that they're able to be more agile. But,
Yeah, I think, Go ahead.
I wouldn't necessarily, I love steak, but I think because some organizations are able to demonstrate that they would meet the needs of multiple critical needs, the fact that they narrowly said that, particularly for the food pantry, is one need, I don't necessarily feel the need to go above the minimum.
And you're thinking because like the Yolo Crisis Nursery, it's housing, it's mental health, it's early intervention, it's, I see, right. I see, that makes sense. Are there any here that we wanted to give more to? From what Rachel just described? Which I think is a strong rationale.
I mean, I think the homeless outreach from DCMH, I mean, they asked for less than they received last year. So, I mean, that could be bumped up just 1,000 to 16. So as things currently stand, let's just review. So that would put homeless outreach at 16, emergency shelter at 24, stake and stake both at 7, YOLO Crisis Nursery at 8,600, YOLO Children's Alliance at 7,000, Meals on Wheels at 16,400, Y3C at 10, and YOLO Food Bank at 12 and change. This just brings it to 108 even, so there'll be change.
What if we bumped up what Yolo Crisis Nursery asked for their minimum for this year? Because they asked for
Yeah, they
10 as their minimum,
Last year.
and they,
I like that.
Could you remind me the logic of the calculation, because it seemed like a lot of things you're going based on last year's numbers, but in YOLO Children's Alliance, they received 15 last year, but you were suggesting 7. So
But because, so I'm going by minimums. So, yeah, so they only asked for 7,000. I mean, they said 7,000 was their floor. So, but we could easily adjust that. We could give them more. So yeah, anyone who said 7, there were only 3 that said 7,000 as their floor. I gave them their 7.
yeah, it sounds like, based on Commissioner Wong Chen's point, that some of these hit multiple critical needs, and there should be a slight point advantage based on that, and that does resonate with me. So I'm wondering if the ones that we can argue are meeting as many critical needs as possible, we can go above the minimum.
That's a great rationale. And I also think it's worth thinking about YOLO Children's Alliance, being that they did get 15 last year, and they're asking for 7, and they're asking for 15 again this year, that we could find a middle ground with them above the 4.
Yeah, I think putting a little bit more there would be a preference.
So what do people feel comfortable with? With YOLO?
I mean, I'm comfortable going to the minimum for Yolo Food Bank because of the money that they have access to elsewhere.
I think we're going way below the minimum for YOLO Food Bank.
Oh.
They do.
Oh, but not the minimum of 7,000. We're going to
Oh,
the
no,
minimum
no,
they asked for.
minimum.
Yeah,
minimum
I'd be okay giving them
Okay.
7,000 and redistributing what's above
Okay.
that to the other organizations that just don't have the level of assets that they have.
So
Again, not knocking their work, really
they
want to
do
be clear.
good, they do good stuff, but they are champion fundraisers,
Yes.
champions.
Then we would still need to do that 6,000 somewhere.
So yeah, so we can pull, as it stands, I don't know if my math is still holding up, that means that we would have, if we bring them to 7,000, that means we have 5,000 to play with.
Mhm. So, can we give more on the emergency shelter, which we know is a struggle every year?
Don't we still need to deduct 6,000 to make it to the
I was thinking we would,
19,000 gap that we
So, let me just,
apologies, I was thinking if we had 12,000 left.
no, we have 5,000 left if we give YOLO Food Bank 7.
Got it.
So we have 5 to play around with.
I thought that
Oh, wait,
we
So
still
hold
need
on,
to
let me
deduct-
just do the math.
we
Let me
still
just
need
do
to
the math.
deduct,
Let me just do
6,000.
Nothing like a collaborative math problem.
Thank goodness, Steve Jobs put calculators.
Yeah, because we need to deduct 19,000 from the total minimum.
Okay.
So for the DCMH emergency shelter, I like that they do a variety of critical needs, but also in my mind, I would want to perhaps deduct them a little bit just because it's the direct service versus the administrative expenses.
Sorry, which one were you referring to?
DCMH emergency shelter. And you had also already had suggested going below their minimum as well. You're trying to calculate back to last year. So if that's the case, then that might save us, that might be additional 4,000 taken away.
So you suggest 20 there?
Oh, I guess I was in support of the,
The 20?
even the 24, because
Okay.
for the rationale of
Okay.
relative to the other ones, there's that, the way just the money is a little less direct.
Just,
And if that's the case, then the 6 plus the 13, then we're where we need to be. If everyone got their minimum except for if that one was dropped down to 24 and the old food bank was dropped to 7, then everyone would get their minimum, unless we want to then calculate bumping up certain people.
I think going with the minimum they requested and not just the, well, yeah, maybe some slight increase on some of them, because I think some of them may have been modest in their request. I think we understand from the presentations we've had that a lot of these organizations are operating on shoestrings. But what you just suggested makes sense to me.
Well, I guess so. I'm doing that. So if the only changes we made were to drop Yellow Food Bank to 7,000 and Dave's Community Meals and Housing to 24, then we'd be where everyone minimum is. But if we thought we needed to bump up anybody, then we'd have to think of where we bump down.
can we, let's review our numbers again.
Okay, you tell me.
All right, so, were we at 16,000 for homeless outreach? 16, okay, 24. I should probably actually look up there. 7, and then 7 for state, 8,600. 7, 16,4, 10,000. And let's actually see where we wind up before we add in.
That's 96,000 based on,
So we have 12,000 to.
they want to check me?
Yeah, I think, no, that's what I came up with.
Okay.
So if that is
And
96,000,
then you included the 7 for your food bank too, right?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm. So if we include 7 for the food bank, that gives us 5,000 more to play with.
I think we have more than that. Isn't our total 108?
So if we gave a Yellow Food Bank 7, if we're at 96, and then we gave Yellow Food Bank 7,
That puts us at 103.
yeah, then we have $5,000 more.
Got it. That checks out. Okay.
One suggestion would be for Yellow Children's Alliance to bump up their minimum because last year they got 15,000.
Yes.
Yes.
Agreed. So do we want to bring them to 12, or do we want to spread the love?
I worry about the emergency shelter being below their minimum request.
Okay.
Just getting them a little bit closer to that. It's a critical need. We know they do good work. And they asked for 30. Even if they got 24 last year, if we can do something there, that would be good. Is there anyone else below their minimum? Oh, Meals on Wheels is below their minimum request.
Yeah.
So that would be another place to maybe add a little bit more, to spread it between those two.
Okay, so where do we want to wind up with the Children's Alliance? if we have 5,000, I mean, we can also always,
How about we do 3 and then 1, like,
so 10 for the Yellow Children's Alliance,
sure.
and then emergency shelter at 25, and Meals on Wheels at 17,400. We should do this in Excel next year. So
I was thinking it was.
it would be much easier. Okay, I've used up my math brain. Someone else would like do the
Yeah,
quick math on this and make sure, and then
all right. So are we using the 15,000 number again? We're doing 16, okay, 16, 25. That puts us at 107,600.
oh,
We're very,
we're very close. Does that give us another like 1,000? No, less, like $500.
Mm-hmm.
well, maybe it should go to,
Yellow Crisis Nursery.
or to Stake, because they're at the absolute minimum. We didn't bump them up at all. We give one of their programs an extra 500.
Sounds good.
But we're at their minimum, and we're not at Yellow Crisis Nursery's minimum.
Oh, good point.
So what if we gave them 400? I mean, so we make 9, Yellow Crisis Nursery 9.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
So, give me that change one more time. 9 for Yellow Crisis.
Yellow Crisis Nursery at 9,000.
Oh, they're at 9,000. Okay. And then they did not change. Children's Alliance,
Children's Alliance is at 10.
okay.
That brings us to 108,400.
Yep.
Do we need to take that, I mean, we can adjust, as we adjust through the yellow
Yeah.
bank to get to exactly where we need
Our
to be.
max is $108.23, so
108 and 23, so
Yeah.
what do we have to get rid of?
there's
300
400 extra in Meals on Wheels. Right? You're making 17.
Oh, we're at 17,400, do you want to just make that, we can make that 17? Yeah, so
Let's just
we make that
make it
17,
17.
we minus the 400, and then we'll add the $23, or who should get our $23? I'll take that.
Evenly distributed.
So we're,
Bless you.
look at you guys.
So what if we added that to Yellow Food Bank, being that we're,
Yeah,
well, just a 7,023?
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
I think this looks good.
I do too. Just double checking. Yeah. I think this is probably the most methodically we've ever done this.
with the least amount of argument.
And I want to make sure I've got a couple of rationales here, and I want to make sure that I can include them in the council staff report. So we've got, some were awarded based on their ability to serve multiple critical needs. Some were awarded, their minimum request, unless they, also met multiple critical needs. And then at that point, you made a determination to, increase their funding to at least align with what they received in previous years. And for Davis Community Meals and Housing, the emergency shelter, they got a larger allotment because of the critical need that they provide in the community and their multiple measures on the community, on the critical needs list, and because the amount is still less than what their minimum request was, but substantial enough to meet their critical need. Any other rationale that you want to include?
We also, if an organization has a very large budget, we favor those that have smaller operating budgets because they have less access to the amount of revenue and assets that the large organizations have.
Capacity issue too.
All right, looks like we have a set of recommendations. Anyone have any other parting thoughts on public service? Okay.
Do you want to move on to?
Yes, let's move on to home.
They were the only applicant, so, this would be up to you. Mutual Housing is, we've had multiple projects with them before. They've always been very easy to work with. They have the capacity to do the work, that they have proposed in the past, and on previous projects, they've, devoted enough staff to kind of manage all of the intricacies of a Davis-Bacon program. They have that capacity to do that. So staff has a lot of confidence in their ability to be able to complete this project within the time frame allotted, which is the 1 year.
And how much, we have 308,000 available for home?
Can you remind me what happens with the surplus that isn't granted?
Either it rolls back into, back up to HUD. Generally, we try to get as close as possible. Sometimes what we will do though is, because at some points, even though you've made the award, about halfway through the year, we check in to make sure that they're spending on time. So if we have projects that are underspending, other projects that could use additional funding, we may come back to you and say, hey, we'd like to make some adjustments, and then we can adjust some of the funding at that point.
Is it usual that there's only one or very few applicants for this portion?
I think we had 3 last year.
Right. We did some pretty broad outreach this time around. I think that what you're seeing is a reflection of the agencies that are actually in the city doing work. There are other applicants that, we saw more people at the technical assistance workshop, but they made the determination that they didn't have the ability to, or the capacity to do the work in Davis for the amount of award that they would get. So some agencies just declined because of that. That could change next year as we see more providers come into town because of CalAIM, which is a large mental health and health program. So it's encouraging organizations to kind of come to new places. We may see more people next year. And then depending on what happens with the governor's budget next year, people may be looking for more opportunities for funding, so we may see more people next year. This year, we just didn't see that. A lot of people's capacity to do work here.
Do we know, I actually don't remember, I don't recall from the application, do we know if the lack of having a water softener is affecting the hot water heaters? Is that making them?
Not in this case, I think what they said was it really was, they're at the end of their useful life. That's what they said from when they originally did the project. So many of them were coming in and making upgrades to more energy efficient units. That's the one thing that they cite consistently. And then some of them are considering on-demand units, which are also more energy efficient. So they're really looking at the envelopes of the building, but mostly it was useful life.
The water is very hard here at Davis.
Going back to money being rolled over if there's no applicant for the year, would the applicant be aware that there's more money this year because there were no applicants the prior year, or is it still the same regardless of whether there was money rolled over or not?
So for home funding, we don't typically roll money over. Those projects are longer because they're construction projects, but we really like to allocate all of that funding. And where we didn't see applications it was a different source. That was public facilities. That's where we didn't have any applications in that category. And in that case, the city has an option to expend funding on eligible uses. So previous years, what you've seen is the city will come in and they'll pay for ADA improvements, they'll do curb cuts and things like that, because there's always a demand for that. It's just in this particular case, we also have the ability to make improvement to a public building that we own, a public facility, using CDBG dollars because of the use. It's an ADA improvement, it's serving low-income compliance. And so in that case, we were able to expend the funds there. But the money would not roll over. We'd have to find in CDBG public facilities, we need to find a use.
In my reading of this application, it seems like an excellent use of the funds. The fact that they are right now struggling with emergency replacements, which I'm sure are far more costly and a great inconvenience to the families, this seems like a great use of the dollars.
And I just want to speak so highly of New Harmony. They are it's a fantastic, I mean, it's right, I live around the corner from there, so I saw it being built, and it's a great place. And anything that we can do to make life, easier, normal, water heater, that is a big deal. Water softener, not necessary, but very, very, very nice to have and very close to being necessary in Davis. I imagine they'd have many fewer repairs if they had a water softener, or like a big, with the calcification. My recommendation would be to fund this at the full amount, as that $308,000.
I would second that recommendation. Do we need to vote on it, or do we need to just?
We have-
You need to vote for both.
Oh, great, of course.
Okay, do we have any other thoughts about this one?
When you said, I'm looking for the numbers, are you saying maximum that?
The max that's available. So they asked, their minimum was 300, and we have 308 available. Their max was 400.
And to be clear, there were no other requests for these dollars.
Not for home.
Then great.
That makes it nice and easy for us.
Yeah.
All right, do we have any other comments or suggestions before we vote? No? Commissioner Ennis, would you like to make a motion?
Do we vote on both, or do we want us to vote on them separately, separate categories?
Let's vote in separate categories, just so we
Okay.
can.
All right, so should we do public services first?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the funding allotments as discussed tonight and outlined in the current table.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have some recommendations. All right, and I can make a second motion unless someone else wants to. Okay, I motion to support the home recommendation to fund mutual housing at $308,000. All
I'd like to second that.
right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We have another recommendation.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the number. What is it?
Sorry.
Somebody, I see that there's total proposed request is 400,000,
Yes,
and the minimum request is 300, and
Yes.
the number you said was,
308, because that's what's available. We're spending all of it.
what did I saw something for 460, was I looking at?
I think that probably includes administrative costs. Yeah, it always gets reduced.
Okay, so as long as the 300 is the maximum, yes, I would not say.
Okay. Look at where we are. And that's not even bad, it's only 8:40. Okay, planning and long range.
Really quickly,
Oh, yeah.
just so a reminder of what the
Okay.
process is, now that you made your recommendations, we'll be going to council on June 18th with your recommendations. So,
All right, planning and long range calendar.
reach out to Chris again. So you'll see that we have moved the Meals on Wheels liaison update to the June date. Hopefully, next month, I'll be coming to you with the updated account numbers and with a draft of our own strategic plan. And we can also talk about adopting a new calendar for 24-25. And then the only other thing I see on here are tenant protections, if you guys wanted to come back to that. And then I want to confirm, I don't have July on here, I need to add July. But I've got us recessed in August, is that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I will add July on there as well.
So I just wanted to comment that June 17th I will not be here, so I don't know if that will affect, as long as.
As long as Dan.
As long as Dan's got it,
Yeah, yeah.
it should be fine. Any other additions or things you want to see? For the July, well, I will suggest that we debrief this process maybe
Okay, well, that's
next
great.
month too. And see, we can talk about, what worked, what didn't, what we'd like to see. So I'll add that.
If we're proposing dates for July, I think I'm only in town on July 8th for Mondays.
Our meeting will be scheduled for the 15th. Any other conflicts? I may not be here for the July meeting.
Maybe we recess in July. If we needed to recess in July and August, we can come in fresh in September.
Yeah, it'd be up to you. I think
That sounds good.
When will we know about new members,
the,
the new commissioners?
I'll find out, I don't know.
Okay, I think it's June. End of June. But they could always start in September. Back to school.
Did we decide on that? Is that July and August is?
Yeah, are we deciding? I think we can decide that next month. Okay, do we need to take public comment on the long range calendar, or are we good?
This is your calendar, so. Don't have liaison reports this month.
Okay, do we have any development projects? No? Oh, well,
I think those were the ones.
those
you
were the ones
had.
that,
We do have, to date, we've sold 4 of the affordable for sale units, and we've got 2 affordable for sale units that are in contract, I believe. So it's, and we're seeing an uptick in the number of units that are coming online.
Great.
Social services and housing, Davis Community Meals and Housing is now fully staffed up at the Respite Center. They've got 4 staff, and they are now open and regular business hours from 8 to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. We are not going to be open on Saturdays. Right now, there's just not the capacity or budget to be open on Saturdays. But we did talk with Deepak, who was holding their pet clinic on Saturdays at Respite. We have moved them to 512 Fifth Street. So they're now doing their pet clinic at 512 Fifth Street. They've got more room, they've got more access to water. It's it's easier access, so they're very happy with that. The consultant is working on our draft of the homeless strategic plan. They should have a final draft for me to review by the end of this month. Once I get that, I'll send it over to our executive committee here at the city. They get a chance to bite at the apple, and then I'll bring it back to you all to discuss. But we hope to bring that to council in July as well. We'll bring it to you first in June. And let me see. I think those were the big things. This process is happening, so thank you very much. And I think that's all.
Great. All right. Good work. Very efficient. Oh, public comments? Any public commenters? Please come.
In terms of the allocation of funds that you've been discussing for the last hour, I didn't see any discussion or vote on the public facilities budget.
I think we can ask. Yeah. Ask Dean.
So with no applications that came from the public, then the money returns to the city, and the city makes a determination of where those funds will go. And the city at this point has decided that we'll spend the bulk of that funding at the Respite Center for improvements.
All right, very glad to hear that. Thank you.
We're glad to hear it too.
Yeah, very excited. All right. Productive meeting today, and we are adjourned.